All right, so I'm back after my coast-to-coast hike across Scotland, known as the Great Outdoor Challenge. Now, during this next week or so, while I put together all of my trail footage so I can put together the awesome video and show all of you how great that our hike was, I want to take an opportunity to be able to talk about my gear. Did a couple of videos on what gear I'm bringing, made some adjustments, had a lot of feedback. I want to talk about what worked, what didn't work, what did I never use, and why am I selling my Zpacks Zpacks? Welcome back, hikers, to Follow Bigfoot, where knowledge is our niche to hike in the outdoors. If you're new to the channel, stick around and subscribe. We cover everything and anything that you need to know to not just get prepared and get yourself on the trail, but to stay on the trail and get you to wherever your final terminus may be. Gear choices. I had a lot of gear choices and decisions to make on this hike across Scotland. A lot of feedback that all of you gave me, which I took a lot. More than I've ever taken, I think, in any of my other hikes. Small disclosure, I'm not covering every single piece of gear that I brought with me on the Great Outdoor Challenge, mainly because there is quite a bit of gear that I've talked about in other videos, I've done reviews on. First is my Ultras, the Lone Peak 4s. These make the gear that went well list. I did not like the 3.5s. I didn't like the toe box. The toe box on the 4s are much wider. These seem to ventilate a little better. I did not get a single blister on my feet or my heels the entire time that I hiked. That's the first time I've ever hiked more than 150 miles that I haven't gotten a blister. Now, I always use Inquires socks that I pair up with whatever footwear that I'm bringing. I've never gotten a blister on my toes since I started using Inquires socks. I use the trail mid-weight Inquires socks. They last me about 500 or 600 miles, so typically when I change out my footwear, it's probably about the time that I need to change my Inquires socks. But what typically happens for me is I get a hot spot in the back part of my heel. I did not on this, and we hiked some pretty big days. Me and Darwin actually hiked a 38-mile day. We hiked a handful of days in the 20s, 29, 20, a couple 27s. So we put a fair amount of mileage in, and the day that we did 38 miles, it was pretty wet. It was the day that rained on us for about 4 or 5 hours at the end, but no blisters. So I'm really excited about how these perform. REI Co-op Fleece Quarter Zip worked great. I am so glad that I switched this out. I wore this most days. Patagonia Cap Air Base Bottoms. I just bought this right before I left. These things were really warm. They're robust. I had no problems staying warm. Even when it got down into the mid-20s, I think was probably the coldest that we saw on the trail. I only wore these a couple times. The temperatures were very favorable for us in Scotland. I probably wouldn't bring these during most hikes in the States, unless if I was hiking in very early spring or very late fall. A lot of people are going to have a problem with no fly. There's no fly in these. It really doesn't matter to me. I did read the reviews before I bought these. Montbell's VersaLite rain pants. These worked out well. I never had an issue with them wetting out while I was hiking. I only ended up hiking in the rain for maybe 8 or 9 hours. But, you know, they did as well as I expected. They're just overkill for anything, again, that I probably use in the States. Wrapping up the rest of my clothing that worked out well, this is Montbell's VersaLite rain jacket. I've done a review on this. I'm not going to go in a lot of detail. However, with the weight that I've lost, this is starting to get kind of big on me. I am going to get a different rain jacket, and after talking with Darwin, he is a big fan of Zpacks Virtus rain jacket. When it comes to time that I'm going to purchase my next rain jacket, that is the one that I'm going to get. Breathability in the Virtus is really what is swaying me towards the Virtus instead of maybe getting another size smaller of the Montbell VersaLite rain jacket. Sony RX100 Mark VI. This is my new vlogging camera. I shot my entire trail footage from this camera. And although I haven't had a chance to put together all of my trail footage, I haven't listened to much audio. I know that's probably going to be something that may change my mind on this. We'll see, but the footage, really happy with how it came out, how easy this is to operate. I'm still learning a lot about this camera, but it's nice and compact, fit in my fanny pack reasonably well, and overall, I mean, I was happy with just being able to use this and how easy it was to use this while I was on the trail. Headco UltraPod, this thing was a rock star. Checking in at only 1.8 ounces, this exceeded all my expectations. This thing, not only is it nice and compact and small, and by far the lightest tripod that I've ever brought, pairing this thing up with my Sony RX100, this thing just worked so well. So much that it was easy for me to stow this in my fanny pack, pull it out without having to attach it every single time. I actually never used the Velcro feature where you can use to attach to a tree limb or something to hold your camera, but this thing was a rock star, and it had everything that I needed and nothing that I didn't. MSR groundhog stakes, I got pretty lucky on these guys. I say that because I was originally going to bring the MSR carbon core stakes, and I want to give a shout out to Jay Wanderers that suggested that I changed my stakes. He recommended getting something that's 7 to 9 inches long, something that can hold your tent in place, not to mention the winds that you get. Well, I ditched the MSR carbon cores and went with the groundhogs, and wouldn't you know it, one of the nights, the windiest night that we had, which was about midway through our journey, my tent was the only tent that did not get destaked throughout the night because of these guys right here. I use these on my storm doors and a couple of the other areas of my tent, the critical pitch points. But these performed just so well that I might retire my Zpacks V-stakes and just bring 2 of these on all my trips and pair these up with the MSR carbon core and just use these for my storm doors. My last piece of gear that makes my great gear list is the sleeping bag that I'm sitting on right now. It is the Zpacks Classic Sleeping Bag. Now, I talked about testing out a prototype quilt on one of my final gear videos. It's actually a sleeping bag that I got, not a quilt. I did not pay for this. Zpacks asked me if I wanted to test out their new classic sleeping bag. What is different about their new sleeping bags, first, is the down that they're using. So they're moving away from 900 fill down and they're going to 950 down tech water repellent down. They have changed the sizing of their classic sleeping bags. Foot box, the toe box, is now rectangular and it's wider. The dimensions are wider, so you actually have a lot more space down here. I could tell a huge difference from my 40-degree sleeping bag, which is the old classic sleeping bag I used on the Appalachian Trail, to this sleeping bag. This is the standard medium width and length. I am 5'8.5", call me 5'9". This was plenty. I didn't need anything more, and honestly, I felt like I had a wide width, not a standard. This is a 20-degree sleeping bag. The weight on this comes in at 19.25 ounces for their 20-degree classic sleeping bag. Now, I don't have the specs on their new quilts, so they've also changed their solo quilts. Both the classic sleeping bag and the quilt will have the 950 down tech in there, and again the new dimensions on their foot boxes. They have 4 different colors that they are offering. This right here is the azure blue. They have a green, they have orange and black. So 4 different colors to choose from. And they're also changing the temperature ratings on both their quilts and their sleeping bags. They're moving away from 5, 20, and 35 degree temperatures to 10, 20, and 30. They'll be launching them on their website sometime Tuesday or Wednesday of this week. Now, this next piece of gear, I'm not putting in the gear that I didn't like, but I'm also not putting it in my great gear bucket, because there was something that I found out after sleeping on it for quite a few nights on the trail that you know, didn't meet all of my expectations, and that is the Therm-a-rest UberLite I'm sitting on right now. What I loved about the UberLite is it kept me warm on all the nights. The night that it got down to 25, I can tell that it was starting to get a little bit colder below me. I still stayed warm. I probably wouldn't take this with me on trips that I would know get into the 20s or lower. I would go back down to the X-Lite. I did not have any problems with this being noisy, but what I did have a problem with a little bit is just how slick that the material is. It was pretty easy for my pillow to slide off of this thing. If you're not on completely flat ground, the UberLite will kind of push you around. So might be something that could be a deal breaker for some of you. It's not a deal breaker for me, but at the same time, it's also not something that I'm super stoked about. Gear that I really wasn't that happy with, I've been using the SOG ultralight knife for the last, gosh, I don't know, maybe 3 through hikes. It's just overkill. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna change this out and I'm gonna start bringing the Swiss Army Victorinox or something, I can't remember what it's called. I'll link this below as well. What's nice about this is it's got a little tweezers for those. If you need a toothpick, it's got a toothpick. I don't know if I've ever used a toothpick. Outside of it having just a knife, it also has a little screwdriver. Also very useful is the scissors. When I thru-hike the Appalachian Trail, I use the scissors to cut my fingernails and cut my toenails. This only weighs like 0.8 or 0.9 ounces. I'm gonna start carrying this thing again. This just has so many great features and is totally practical for everything that I need out there. My last piece of gear that I had some issues with was my Light AF ultralight fanny pack. There's a lot of things on here that I liked. I love the color. It matched my Nero. Chris did a phenomenal job. He put my Follow Bigfoot logo right here on the side. This front pouch did a pretty decent job with carrying some extra food. The couple issues that I had with it. First, I really wish that they would have some sort of pocket to put your cell phone, slide your cell phone in. I actually had a problem that this created. So I was carrying my cell phone inside of my fanny pack, and then I would be putting my Sony RX100 inside of there. And to save time, I was attaching my UltraPod with my RX100. Now, putting both of those inside of the fanny pack, the UltraPod or something pressed up against the display of my phone, and after 24 hours, my display completely went out on my phone. My phone, honestly, was useless. I could get notifications from my watch from my phone, but I couldn't see anything on my phone. I was phoneless for about 12 of the days. So those of you that were following me on Instagram, I mentioned I was gonna post all kinds of pictures. I wasn't able to do anything for a long time because I had no phone. I wish that the volume of the fanny pack was a little bit larger, or if it had that pocket in the back, I wouldn't have to put my phone in this pocket. But stuffing both the RX100 and the UltraPod in there with my phone and the food, this just wasn't enough room. For a lot of people, they probably aren't going to have that issue because they're not carrying vlogging cameras. I'm going to be going and looking for another fanny pack that's a little bit bigger, and I want to have the pocket in the back to be able to slide my cell phone in. Now I'm going to cover these last 4 pieces of gear that I never used while I was on the trail, and then I'll cover why I'm selling my Zpacks Zpacks. First is the Nightcore NU25. I never used a headlamp while I was in Scotland. If I went back to do the Great Outdoor Challenge again, I don't even know if I'd bring a headlamp. I would just use the light on my phone. It was so much daylight. I think it got light out where you could see at 4 o'clock in the morning, and you could see until about 10:30 at night in May in Scotland. Tick key, never used this. I found 3 or 4 ticks on me the entire time. I treated all of my gear, my shelter, my pack, my poles, my footwear with permethrin. I always do that before I get on the trail. Some of the other guys forgot, and you could tell with the amount of ticks they found. And ticks, I will tell you, they are a real issue out in Scotland. So take that stuff seriously. Make sure you treat your stuff with permethrin. I'll link that below. Any exposed areas that you don't have anything that's treated with permethrin, you do want to use some sort of DEET or something like that. The head net I brought for midges, I had my most comments on my channel about midges and being careful for them. Never had any issues. I think there was one night that I had a swarm of something that maybe was a midge that I got bit, but they seemed to be too big for midges, but I never had any issues with midges on there, but never wore this once. And lastly is the NRS Hydro Socks. It was so dry in Scotland when we hiked through it. I never used these, so why am I selling my Zpacks Zpacks shelter? I've had this shelter for a couple years now. I think the first time I used it was a couple summers ago when I was training for my FKT attempt of the Superior Hiking Trail. Checks in at 15.5 ounces. Phenomenal for having a full shelter underneath a pound. Honestly, what really has pushed me to the point where I want to sell it, it's just not big enough for me. It is so hard to manipulate your body and sleep in a way to try to avoid having your toe box touch your ceiling and getting your toe box of your sleeping bag or quilt wet, or being underneath the ceiling by, pulling everything up, pulling your pad and your sleeping bag up, and then you're basically sleeping right underneath the ceiling and it's touching your forehead. I'm 5'9", and honestly, for a shelter like this, it would work out great for someone that's like 5'6", 5'5" probably. What I am weighing out is getting the Plexamid, so that's one option. The other option is going with a tarp. Now, while I was on trail for the couple weeks with the Zpacks, I came to find out they're going to be launching a new tarp. It is basically the Hexamid tarp with storm doors. So right now they have the Hexamid tarp with no storm doors. They are going to release one with storm doors. That is the one that I would pick. I don't know what the weight is going to be on it. Now, depending on the conditions that I would be hiking in, if there was no bugs, well, then I would just have the tarp. The other option would be is if I'm going somewhere that is going to be really buggy, then I'll have some sort of bivvy. To help pay for that, I'm selling my Zpacks Zpacks. Zpacks doesn't sell the Zpacks anymore. They stopped selling it maybe like a year ago. If you're interested in buying my Zpacks, I have put it up on eBay. I have it on an auction that will last, 5, 6, 7 days. That wraps up my entire gear overview of the gear that I took with me on the TGO challenge. If you have any experience with the gear here, throw them in the comments below. We'd love to hear what your thoughts are on some of the things that I showed in this video. I have links to every single product below in the description box if you want to check it out. Now, in the next week or so, I'll be uploading the trail footage, my trail videos from Scotland. You'll get a chance to see me hiking with Zpacks, Darwin, the Black Alaskan, and plug-it-in hikes. So look forward to that. Stay tuned, and I will see you guys next time.